Welcome, and welcome to all y'all. Thanks for joining us. So this is going to be a little less formal than maybe some of the other presentations, but I'm Josh Cheney. I'm an industry manager on the construction technology side of BIM 360. 13 years of construction technology or pure construction experience, so a good mix. And have these great gentlemen up here on stage with me too. Really the focus today is going to be solving challenges in the construction space through collaboration. So I'll let Bennie introduce yourself.
Thanks, Josh. My name is Bennie Baltrotsky. I'm the Chief Strategy Officer at eSUB Construction Software. We focus on project management and field data collection for the commercial subcontracting market. We're built in the cloud and mobile first, so we've always been built on an understanding of open collaboration and integration as being one of the founding members of COSA that we'll talk a little bit more about later. I have an interesting background. I got into construction 10 years ago from the mobile technology side, and now putting that forward into construction now to the subcontractor market.
Phil?
Phil, so that's me. My name is Phil Ogilvie. I'm the founder and the CEO of a company called Stack. I've been in the industry a long time. My prior startup is called I²Foot. If you've heard of I²Foot, that was me. Today we really have the first ever cloud solution for takeoff and estimating. And we're one of the founding members of COSA. We'll talk some more about that later, but we're glad to be here.
All right, and Trent?
My name's Trent Miskelly. I run the product division for JBKnowledge over in, you've probably seen the contact crew around here. That's my CEO and the rest of the guys, James. Our flagship products are focused on bid invitation and soliciting invitation to bid from subcontractors for the general contracting market. We also have Smart Insight, which is our public database for subcontractors. I've been in the construction technology business for about 10 years. Prior to this, I co-founded another company in the BIM space called Assemble Systems, which you may have seen around the conference as well. So happy to be here and hang out with these guys.
Cool, that's great. So anyone that has worked in construction technology, probably feels like they've lived this life at least once, right? Kind of this jumbled mess of collaboration, communication, document sharing, and then work actually getting done on the job site. And so we're up here to talk a little bit more about how we go from that to a world where wouldn't it be great if instead all these different tools really talk to each other, and how do we get there? So standards is going to be something that we hit on a little bit here. So we've got us kind of on the design side. Like Trent said, Smart Bid in front of the bidding side, Stack, takeoffs and estimating, and then lastly we've got eSUB on the project management side for subcontractors. So really just open it up for you guys to talk a little bit about, but so how did all three of you, because you guys had an integration with each other before we came on board with you also, so how did you guys get started?
I guess I'll kick it off. So I think one of the first things that happened as a group is we integrated with SmartBid. And so, as I said earlier, we have kind of the first ever solution for takeoff in the cloud. Well, the cloud is a wonderful place to be for so many reasons. It's the right place to be working with your software. But one of the challenges is you got to upload drawings, right, into the cloud. And for a construction project, that can be hundreds of documents and literally hundreds of megabytes of data. So we partnered with the folks at SmartBid and just really eliminated the downloading and uploading process. So it's a beautiful thing for the consumer, right, at the end of the day, because you can just click once, the document opens, there's no need to download and re-upload any of that stuff. But that seemed like a perfect path.
And it's been a natural value add for us too, because the general contractors benefit because they can get access to plans faster, take off if they so desire, but more importantly to us, it's been the subcontractor side. I mean, which we really did, we served obviously getting them invitations to bid, but getting plans in front of them and giving them easy tools to get into is a big value add, and we're not going to build it. We can't build everything in the space. So these guys focused on the best of breed there. We focused on the best of breed on the bidding side and tried to bring the solutions together to deliver something greater than the sum of its parts.
And then when seeing with what Stack was doing, serving some of the subcontractors that we served, and our subcontractors now, after they take off and estimate this, now they need to start managing these projects once it's been awarded. And that's where we sort of then connecting and realizing that there were some great synergies there, because it could go from the GC, from an invitation to bid, to a takeoff and estimating, and then the subcontractor could immediately then start managing that project once it's been awarded. And so we saw our specialization in each one of those fields where I don't want to get into estimating and takeoff or invitation to bid, and really just merged at that point and really came together on some of these topics.
Yeah, awesome. So, in a past life, I worked for a large ERP solution. Everything that was preached about there was one solution that was integrated, and trying to maintain everything within the boundaries of that one company. So, can you guys shed any light on the differences between like a siloed work environment with one solution versus opening up the floodgates to working interoperability between systems?
It's a great intro, and I'll pass the baton over to Benny, but really it was Benny and James that really get full credit for coming up with this COSA idea. So you want to talk a little bit about what that is and
I think
where that idea came from?
Yeah, and I think it really ties into it. So we were sort of sitting around having coffee in 2012, and we're like pretty frustrated that there was a lot of these providers that said we could do everything. And what our clients were seeing though is maybe they could do one or two things well, and then the other ones were just okay. And so what we realized is, a best-of-breed environment we had seen win in other industries, and then putting together a coalition of software companies that wanted to not only integrate but adhere to standards. And the reason why this would be helpful is to have exactly what we're seeing on stage here, where instead of being generalist, we are very specialized in the products that we serve and allowing them to integrate, versus trying to be an all-in-one where maybe we did one or two things well. And I think the traditional ERP has historically been threatened by this idea, though we are all built in the cloud first. And so that was a really big difference to a lot of the people in 2012 when we were first started with the COSA initiative. A lot of this stuff was on premise, and so it really helped us to speed these types of integrations.
Yeah, and coming from Assemble and then to here at SmartBid, that's been the biggest challenge from a software standpoint that we've faced. Just being able to pull information out of the various products that people are using every day, because they're used to them, they're familiar with them, they've found the solution that works for their organization, and trying to pull that information into different products has always been a big challenge. So, to the user community, the standards are going to be really important for us to actually be able to bridge between these different products. Yeah,
for sure. And I think historically, the big one-stop shops have always tried to frame point solutions as setting a negative light on those point solutions. And I think now we're seeing a little bit of a pivot there, where point solutions can focus exclusively on a couple workflows instead of trying to encapsulate all of them. So maybe a follow-up to the COSA discussion there. So why are standards, and then maybe how are standards applied to APIs, right?
Yeah, it's a great point. The fundamental idea behind a standard, what a standard means, standard's an easy thing to say. What does it mean? It's really a standard format for the data, right? So if I've got a big chunk of data around, let's say, an estimate that we want to push over into Benny's solution, the whole idea behind developing a standard is this is how that data is going to be structured each and every time, right? So somebody else can come in and adopt the standard, and it makes the development of a solution to push data in that format very easy and simple and fast, right? That's the idea behind it.
And manual entry, so re-entering things. So I'm sure at your companies you've been, if it's even just a contact record or a project, and so this is where the pain initiates. And it becomes more difficult for different providers to be able to share this information via, you were talking about APIs, so this is just a way to exchange data. If there's not standards around it, but what the end user is having to do then is re-enter this data over and over again, and by standardizing on how these fields will be set up, it makes it easier for companies like us to pass information back and forth.
Yeah, the APIs are just the starting point for us as companies to start figuring out how to communicate information better. We'd like to see those APIs evolve into standards, so that if someone has a different bidding solution and prefers that and still wants to integrate with Stack, that's great. I mean, and they should have that ability to do that. If we don't create the standards, then that's not going to happen.
Yeah, and as you guys being at, kind of the executive level, strategy level, product development level, to maybe touch on that a little bit more, how do you guys make business decisions based on who you integrate with or why you integrate with certain solutions?
Biggest one for me is, do we have similar cultural relationships to the companies that we integrate with now? Honestly, that's probably the biggest barrier to actually getting different product companies to integrate well together. That's one of the reasons that the three of us are up here on stage, is that similarly, from a business standpoint, we see the world the same way, and we know that our customers on either side, for example, subcontractors are more of these guys' customer base. We serve subcontractors, but general contractors are where we make our money. But we know that those subcontractors need better tools so that they can respond to invitations better. So we came together with those that we thought would work best with us, and we're working through how to make our products communicate better based on the feedback that we're getting from those users. So
it's great. It's really an exciting time to be in the cloud, to be candid about it, right? It's an exciting time because, and we go to events like this all the time, and one of the things we hear over and over again is we get half as many prospects coming to the booth as we do companies that want to integrate, right? So they want access to that data during the takeoff, the estimate, the collaboration, the sharing stuff that began in the beginning during the takeoff. What did the guy in the office, what did he actually measure and count, that kind of stuff. So we get a lot of integration opportunities. I mean, for us, you just don't have unlimited resources, of course. Unfortunately, none of us do. So we just try and focus on who's going to make the biggest impact, right? Where's the biggest chunk of potential prospects and customers that we can help with an integration? And that's why we started with these guys. But that's the whole idea as we see it.
From our side, we really listen to our end users. So our end users will drive us to there. So a lot of times they're going to come to us and say, why don't you work with this? Can we get this information in there? How do we get it in there? And so you start hearing that from multiple customers. That's the best place to start. There's other times like this where we know that this will help the overall cycle, because a subcontractor might never really know what smart bid in the sense of they're not a customer, but they received the invitation to bid. On those, we then go out, and I think, as Trent's saying, people that we want to work with and sort of go through, but really from our side, the customer drives it.
Yep. And it's been really great because it's helped all of our businesses grow. I mean, so end result is obviously that coming back to us so that we could, we can grow our businesses and invest more in these relationships.
Yeah, you alluded to it earlier, and I find it interesting too. I mean, I got the most gray hair up here, right? So I've been around a while, but back in the early days, when I started in the technology side of this industry, I mean, it was very common, as you mentioned. I mean, big companies sort of owned the data, right, inside of the application, and they sort of locked it down and didn't want to let others kind of play in that data sandbox. They wanted to find a way to sell it to you. But that's not so much today. It's really opening up for the benefit of the user, and the COSA standards whole idea is really facilitates that. It just kind of provides grease for the process.
And now with the BIM 360, I think that's been really helpful because it's opening up these things. So before, great, we were doing this, we were using it with COSA, but now all of a sudden, eSUB can access into the BIM 360 files, Stack can, JBKnowledge with SmartBid, and other providers that are here today, and start democratizing some of this stuff that used to be potentially locked down, or that's my data or my file, and this is really where the end user will benefit, because we can't keep on doing it the same way. We can't lose efficiency as an industry any further, and I think these are the types of connections that will actually move that curve from a negative efficiency to a positive efficiency, because it helps the whole construction life cycle, not just one portion of it.
And help people share information they otherwise never would even share because it was too hard.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah, so I mean, we haven't really said that out loud, right? But all three of us have just completed an integration with BIM 360. So maybe that's part of the reason we're all sitting up here having this conversation, ironically. But it's interesting that that's the way, of course, the industry's moving, and what a great, single kind of platform that we're all pulling and pushing data from together.
Yep. So yesterday I was in conversation with James Benham, the CEO at SmartBid, and he referred to Autodesk as historically being kind of a secret garden, right? No one could get in there unless you're an Autodesk customer, and none of that data really made its way out of the system. And now, as we're integrating with, kind of the best-of-breed solutions, he started to talk about how that secret garden is now having some windows and doors to get in there, and everybody can kind of enjoy what's going on in our secret garden.
Yeah, well said.
Yeah, so I guess to maybe reframe that a little bit, each of your different perspectives on this, is there one solution out there that can roll up all of this functionality into one play, or do you continue to see fragmentation that then results in further integration?
I would say fragmentation, further integration. I mean, you see this, companies over time try to be everything to everyone, and then, the classic line, you're jack of all trades and a master of none, I think quickly applies. And I think there's always going to be best of breed vendors out there that have subject matter expertise in a particular area that another company just can't develop, or can't develop and make it worthwhile to the end user. So I see a world kind of coming together, best of breed solutions through integrations, through either standards or APIs developed among those parties.
As the market gets more mature, so the end consumer learns more about technology and adoption, there will be some where specialization, I think, helps. I mean, only selling to subcontractors, because we focus more on labor efficiency, and when you were first selling it 10 years ago, they go, well, you can do an RFI, they do an RFI. Okay, is it the same? Though I think what will happen is the better products will win, because people will become more educated consumers, though there will be probably some consolidation around some of these point solutions that are very one-trick things. Not an estimating platform or an invitation bid, but what we're seeing in some of these earlier markets, you might pick up one app to do one thing because it's low barrier to entry, high value. But if that can't tie in very well to a BIM 360 back into eSUB or Stack, it will be difficult for them to mature on.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, at the end of the day, I think the whole concept of owning the soup to nuts, it really speaks, it kind of reinforces the genius of the new Autodesk strategy, right? Which is there are people and companies that operate in their verticals that are going to do it best at all time. And so I think the strategy is spot on. I think it's maybe naive at best to think that one company can own the whole process. I don't think it takes a tremendous amount of cash to pull something like that off. And at the end of the day, it takes smaller companies like ours to focus on a specific niche to really get it right, to play that critical role in the entire kind of process.
And domain expertise. I mean, it's so difficult to really solve one problem, solve it very well, and work with the end user day in, day out, to think that someone could go and just even throw a ton of money at it and try to build different portions of it overnight. These things don't happen immediately. I mean, how long have you been working in the cloud? Right?
Oh, yeah.
How many years has it been now? I've been doing this for 10 years. It's scary.
A long time.
Yeah, right?
A long
It's
time.
like,
you go back to high square foot, it's 2000, so.
Okay, right,
Yeah.
and trying to get them to move forward. And so
Right.
that domain expertise doesn't happen overnight.
No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. Especially in our industry for some reason. Slow to adopt.
Yeah, for sure. So, one of the, I guess, consistent themes that maybe we've seen for maybe the last 5 years, give or take, is a labor shortage, right? Domain expertise being lost as people kind of move on, and there aren't people there to backfill those different positions. So, a question I've got, you guys, I'm sure have thought about this too, is, how do we take construction technology and leverage that to maybe offset some of the labor shortages that we're seeing?
I think it's going to be necessary. I mean, it's going to have to happen, right? So we're losing efficiency. Over 40% of our laborers or people in construction are in the retirement side. It used to be about 20%. So, and we're not slowing down, as we heard in the keynote, right? We're building more than ever. So technology companies and contractors are going to have to adopt and use to become more efficient. The younger millennial generation coming in, who doesn't have the hands-on experience, has more hands-on experience with technology. And I think the companies that figure out how to bridge that gap between the 50-year-old foreman superintendent that has the real domain expertise of doing it with the minds of the future coming out that aren't scared of the technology will really win. And companies will have to do this. We're entering into a phase of a potential digital Darwinism in construction. And so it's going to be the haves and have-nots. And so it's an interesting time to be.
Well, it's not, I think it's not even just the newer generation doesn't fear the tech. Also, they have expectations around the technology. They want and expect to be able to use whatever product they want to use, and that information is going to be easily shareable between whatever other product that they use. So, I mean, I think if we don't get behind that and just understand that that's the direction we're going, then I think as product companies, we're going to suffer because those expectations are already there. They see it every day.
Yep. Yeah. So along those lines, and advancing the next generation of construction workers and solving problems along the way, are you guys working with university construction management tools, construction management teams, construction management undergraduate or graduate programs, architectural programs, to really educate them on what's out there so that they can learn about it in school and carry that into the field?
Well, our CEO, James, is a die-hard Texas A&M Aggie, so we were headquartered right by the university practically. So we work with them a ton. We have universities that use our software in their educational program now, and there's seems to be a bigger and bigger appetite for that. I mean, we're seeing that, I know, with STAC and eSUB as well.
We have a different perspective on it, so no offense to the four-year institution. The skilled trade programs from UA, IBEWs are really training the labor force of the future. And so educating those guys that are coming up through the apprenticeship programs, because that's, if you go into a construction company, at least a subcontractor, your project managers, your VP of ops, they graduated through one of those skilled trade apprentices. They normally don't come from the big four-year institution. So that's where we're more focused on, is educating, maybe not as much through the universities, but through the skilled trade apprenticeship programs that come up.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. We have a program we offer for free, basically. So we have a number of universities that use it, and we're looking for more universities to use it, and benefits both sides of the coin. So yeah, it makes perfect sense.
We're also trying to get out and do this grassroots. I mean, we all run training tracks through our construction technology roadshow to get out in front of users in whatever region of the country they happen to be at, and that's starting to work really, really well.
That's been really helpful for us. We've started to do an eSUB Academy at the Contact Roadshow, so in Oakland next month, December 5th.
Yep.
We'll actually have a track on just training them how to use the tools. They'll have other tracks into different technologies like SmartBid, and that's been something that's been really helpful for us to hit the road and meet people face to face and really get the education firsthand versus just via videos or things like that.
Well, it's a powerful thing too to get. We did that one as well. We're going to do the one with you guys in Oakland, but that's a powerful thing. Getting back to your earlier point, just sitting in front of a group of users and being able to get that feedback in real time. You know, it's so comfortable for all of us to sit at our computer screen and chat with somebody, maybe send an email, but it's really powerful to sit in front of a group of people that actually use your solution and get real time feedback. So yeah, we take advantage of that when we can.
Yep.
Yeah. So. Kind of an off-the-cuff question here, but all of us are probably more focused on the software side than the hardware side. But with Tesla coming out with autonomous vehicles, and there's a company called Built Robotics that just came out with a bobcat that could go and excavate and clear a job site without really anyone being involved. So, looking out over the next 5 or 10 years, do you guys see software, hardware, or a combination of the two helping further offset the labor shortages?
Oh, I think it's all going to come together. I mean, we have to test hardware all the time just to stay up to date on construction technology, and I mean, it changes month to month practically how quickly the tech's coming out. But I think that hardware is also going to be what's producing a lot of the information we see in the future, from trying to combine point clouds with models so that you can see how a project's progressing in real time. To using things like VR to actually be able to see into the project before you actually start it, so that you can deal with design issues up front. So I mean, and that's going to affect all of us. I mean, it affects the planning stage all the way through the actual project management stage. So you're going to see all that continue to happen, and the volume of information produced by the hardware increase exponentially.
And through IoT or this robotics, it all still comes back to some type of standards. It's all data, right? So you might be collecting data from a human endpoint or a robotic endpoint or a sensor or other objects that aren't even there yet. So without having this sort of basis of what we're doing today, We could have all these great IoT devices and all this great robotics, but again, we'll need to have these tie-ins. So this is the building blocks to allow us to get to the future. We see it today. We see people doing prefab. We see people doing more manufacturing, in essence, than installing. And this is just paving the way for the future of our industry.
Yeah, that's a great point. From our standpoint, I mean, our focus is the drawing itself. And so we're, one of the things that we're really focused on is to now start extracting more of the data from the vector PDF. We're seeing more and more vector PDFs versus raster. In fact, 90% of the projects we see go through our system don't have a BIM model, right? So much of takeoff today is still done on the 2D platform. Our focus is on automating and how to eliminate the human interaction that's required to identify things and measure lines and all that kind of stuff. Vector opens up a whole new world for us, and then as we move, eventually more and more of our clients will move towards the model, but as the market is today, we're still seeing like a vast majority of it is based on 2D, and we're looking for ways to automate that 2D process at a much greater level.
I'm amazed at the 3D level that some of the mechanical, electrical contractors are already doing. They're looking for us to pull back in from the field, earn value. And hopefully in the future, this will be something, still there's manual inputs, but in the future, maybe you don't need human input for some of this data, and it's all going to have to tie back to somewhere. And again, I think that's really where for us, from eSUB, BIM 360, or being able to tie back into not just 2D, but 3D is really where it's going.
Yeah, so with COSA in mind, and standards also being in mind, looking out again over the next 5 years, how do we increase standards, increase openness, and really drive further integrations? How do we take a startup and convince them that integrations are as important as really the underlying technology that they're putting in place?
I think what's happening now with the Construction Progress Coalition and COSA combined, Construction Progress had dealt more with end users. So it's one thing for all of us to get up here as technology providers and do it, but really, I always come back to the end user first. And so when you see the end users asking for it, demanding it, and going, and getting their valuable feedback and putting those two worlds together is how we're going to succeed in moving this industry forward and getting those new startups that say, let's go ahead and build to these standards. I mean, I think we get 5 to 10 downloads a week of the standards still. And so it could be anything from a GC shop to a startup to someone at Georgia Tech that's just doing a project. So it's interesting because since they're just available for download, people are just starting to go and say, okay, let's start somewhere. I don't have to reinvent the wheel every time.
And from our standpoint, I think it's all around making it, the biggest impact I think we can make as software providers is make it really easy, right? COSA is a real big step in that direction. But then on the back end of our solutions, we need to create the API so it's easy for somebody who has nothing, has no concept of how construction actually comes together, but they can write code to be able to sit down and pull and push that data back and forth because the APIs are so obvious, intuitively obvious to use. And the COSA standards are in place, so it becomes simple for everybody. So I think from our standpoint, it's education, right? Mm-hmm. Let's make the end user aware that it's available. And then you rely, to Benny's point, I think you rely to a great extent on the end user kind of requesting and pulling that into place. But what we need to do is make it really easy to accomplish that.
And I think the ball's really rolling on this. I mean, 5 years ago, I couldn't have probably found a construction technology company that had an open API that you could go dive into. And now I just about can't find one that you don't have an open API. So, I mean, I think the market's moving very quickly this way. I mean, it's great to see companies like Autodesk becoming more and more open as well. I think the market's heading in the right direction here.
Cool. So, maybe a last question here. So maybe there's a project engineer in the audience that likes to, as a hobby, play around in software or has identified a gap on their job sites. What advice would you give that project engineer if they're looking to make a change from maybe construction to construction technology?
Go play. I mean, just go try it. I mean, go home at night. If you got access to the Forge API, start trying to do something. Try to link up two things. I think that's where we really see the tinkerers, the guys that they go try it. And there's a lot of cool opportunities actually in the construction technology space. And that's where we're getting some of our top talent from. They're guys that come out as engineers, they go and they just want to tinker more.
Well, I mean, you're seeing this, like Project Atlas. I mean, these guys are, it's a team of guys that have been working internally in the construction space for a long time, wanted to bring a better solution to the market. J.E. Dunn's got this unbelievable BIM dashboard that they use for project analysis. I mean, those guys are just out there tinkering and playing and asking and demanding for APIs that they can use to build these tools. And as product people, I love seeing that too, because it gives me the next product ideas. How do we take some of those things and turn them into actual products? So this is also happening.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, that's how we made the transition. That's my 15-year-old son was my first programmer, and so that's how I made the leap from contracting, because I felt some pain, and we built a solution, and pretty soon my buddies in the market were feeling the same pain, and they wrote me a check, and pretty soon I'm in the business. So that's still continuing to happen today, and I think some of the best ideas are going to always come out of the field and the people that are doing the work.
Awesome. Well, Trent, Phil, Benny, thank you guys for giving us a half hour here, and thanks to all of y'all for sharing your lunch with us.